Happy Hump Day. Wait, do I know? Am I on the wrong podcast? Or oh no, sorry.
Hold on, let me put on the hoodie so you can like. Here, is that better?
There you go.
Okay, are you DB Cooper or something? Put the sunglasses.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Everybody in the chat is focused on the Kennedy assassination. Yes, it's the Kennedy. It's the 60th anniversary. I'm sure somewhere in the world the movie JFK is going to be running today or tonight or whatever. And
it was the year I was born. Mike and I visited the site. We did.
Yeah. Yes, I still
were
think
you there too.
Yeah,
guys, make that 3.
I couldn't remember. Sorry.
We were in the depository.
I really still think it's weird that they have a white X in the middle of Elm Street where the headshot took place. It's just bizarre. It's a little macabre, but But anyway, we'll start.
I mean, it's no more macabre than you at least 3 times setting up behind the site by the fence to see the sight line.
I should post that. I have a picture of me going like this behind the grassy knoll fence. But it etched in the fence says, "I was here. Sincerely, Lee Harvey." Oh, never mind. Okay, here we go. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. So today is not going to be about baseball. Today will be about music. Well, sort of music, sort of like yacht rock. Vapid.
It's not yacht rock.
Garbage music.
It's Blue-Eyed Soul. That's what
I was very happy to hear that Hall & Oates have hit hard times, and now Daryl Hall is suing John Oates, and as of November 30th, John Oates won't be able to play any of Daryl Hall's music or whatever he's written, which is probably most of it. And I think if this gets the world to not have to hear Maneater ever again, or some of the other great songs that they've had, I think this is a win for all of us.
Now, wait, okay. First of all, the restraining order prevents him from playing the music. It also keeps him away from him. It's a restraining order. It's like but
it's all of it. Yeah, it does. Well, I don't know if it's actually a restraining order or like
that's the term that
was the term they used. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but okay, let's just get this straight though. Okay, yacht rock is Michael McDonald. It's Christopher Cross. It's Kenny Loggins. Hall & Oates is Blue-Eyed Soul. It's white, soul. They were influenced by
packaged, properly. What is it? Properly
Sarah
packaged.
Smiles is the same yacht rock garbage that
it's
you
not
hear.
Yacht rock. Will you stop? For somebody who knows music,
I think we just have a thing about yacht rock.
Yeah, for some,
I think that's what it is. It's not yacht rock. Definitely not. I don't think it's yacht rock.
It sounds nothing like.
And honestly, the fact that you think it's yacht rock means you're out of touch and I'm out of time.
You used it. I didn't.
Well, Anthony, I can't go for that. No can do.
No can do.
God, this is degenerated. But you knew this, Russ. You knew this was going to happen the minute you broached this topic.
I did, and it's fine because again, I can't think like if there was one band, if I could choose one band that could just stop playing for the rest of my life, Hall & Oates would be it.
Off the side of the planet, it would be Hall & Oates.
It would be Hall & Oates.
Let's just say this: some things are better left unsaid. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, November 22nd, 1960. Oh, sorry, 2023.
All right, Michael, behave yourself. I'm Anthony Mangione from Center Ice Magazine.
I'm Russ Cohen from NHLDraftBuzz.com.
And I'm not Jack Ruby. I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, just because it's out there, and just want to say we hope everybody is safe who are trying to cross the bridges in Western New York. There was an apparent terrorist event at the Rainbow Bridge, a bridge that I've crossed a couple hundred times. So I know yeah,
you cross it a lot. I've done it a fair amount of times, but not like you.
And the funny thing is that I was flipping through the different channels, and John Roberts, who's a Canadian, he's a host on the Fox News this afternoon. He doesn't know I granted, like I crossed the bridge a couple hundred times, and I think he's from the Toronto area. I'm sure he's crossed that bridge a couple times, at least a few times. He doesn't really know the layout of which side the U.S. side and which side the Canadian side is. So it was bizarre. But yeah, we don't know all the details. But we just hope everybody is safe, and I'm sure a lot of people who are trying to get people who are going over to Canada to do shopping and are now stuck in Canada and could be stuck in Canada for Thanksgiving. So they already celebrated the Thanksgiving, so you can get a turkey there, no problem. Anyway, okay, let's start with the World Cup discussion because this is getting ridiculous. I know that because of the ban, the IIHF ban, that the Russians were not going to be involved. Obviously, they've basically canceled or limited different events over the last few years. The World Junior, they're not allowed. The World Championships, they're not allowed. They obviously are not going to be allowed in the Olympics until the war in Ukraine is over with, and as well the World Cup. But now, Russ, it's getting to the point of ridiculousness now where they're limiting this tournament to 4 teams. Canada, Sweden, and Finland. So what this means is every Pasternak will not play in the World Cup, or Anze Kopitar or Roman Josi. They should have a Team Europe. They should.
They definitely should have a Team Europe because there's too many countries not having their players there. And look, you see it in junior hockey. Without the Russians, it's not the same. Is it good? Sure. Is it better for you if you're Canadian or US guy and you could have a better chance of winning? Sure, I guess. But you're not facing the best all the time. You're not.
There's always going to be the asterisk. That's the
that asterisk. Well, you're right,
and that's a big part of it because again, through nobody's fault of their own in this circumstance, but putting together a 4-team tournament to me is kind of. It's just you need more teams. I'm sorry. It's just 14. It's not even a tournament at that point. I mean, what is it?
No.
The H team plays each other 3 times, and then that determines who's going to play whoever in an elimination. And it's just like the stakes are not there. There's not a chance of an elimination in the initial round. So, teams are going to want to play to win. There's national pride and all that, but the actual jeopardy that's involved that motivates the teams, you're just determining who you're going to play, and all you got to do is win 2 games in elimination, and you win the tournament. It's just
there's not enough of a road to travel.
I think it's put together. If you want to put together a team. Again, obviously not put together Team North America. I like the idea of the Europe setup. That's fine.
You could do this, and I know that they split after the wall came down. But you could have if you want to have a tournament with 6 teams, you could have Czechoslovakia or Czechia/Slovakia.
That's like trying to get Hall and Oates together, Mike. It's not going to happen.
You're not going to assemble a Czech and Slovak team together. It's not going to happen. It's
right. I guess. But I
mean, if you have a Team Europe and you have other countries involved, then
if you do Team Europe, like Canada's got like a white and black. If you do like Team Europe, white and black, and you split it up, you just have all the guys in the pool. They figure out the teams, they draft them, whatever. That's fair. Just do that.
Yeah. But see,
but then there'll be some criticism even about that.
Of course, or at least there'd be 6 teams.
They obviously don't want to go with the 23 and unders, which I thought was the most entertaining.
It was the best thing they could ever create.
What about Team North America? Yeah.
Team North America was fantastic. Everybody, there was not one person that didn't like the idea of it, and it will never happen again because of that.
Yeah. So, will I watch? Of course I'll watch because I cover hockey, but I think it's, and plus
your heart won't be in it, Michael.
Plus the other thing is what they're talking about is if it's Finland, Sweden will play all their games in either Helsinki or Stockholm, and Canada, US will play here in North America, and then whoever wins one and wins the other, they come together. I'm like, okay, what they're trying to do is avoid a Finland, Sweden.
You need to set up a rink in Greenland,
right? Right. It's just no.
The first ever hockey game ever played in Greenland.
It's just not good.
I'm not going to say because there's been too much seismic activity in Iceland. So,
and what rinks will they use in North America?
Well, the way I think it was,
Keep it nice and cool.
the way it sounded. I think Elliot was reporting on this. It sounded like the games would be held in the U.S., which I'm sure. I'm sure Canada would be pissed off that either Toronto or Montreal. Apparently they don't want to like go like one game in Montreal, one game in Toronto, or one game in Montreal, one game in New York, one game in Montreal, that type of thing.
What are you going to do? You're going to do it in Minneapolis and St. Paul, so it's only like 10 minutes?
Regina, Saskatchewan.
Buffalo, it's a border town. There you go. Welcome. Yeah, no. So I don't know. I don't know the setup, but apparently they don't want because they're talking about doing it during the All-Star break in 2025. That's the other thing. And that's I have a problem with the Olympics.
You know where it's going to be, Mike? Salt Lake City.
Yep. There you go. Yep. So, okay. So let's talk about where we are right now, which is the day before Thanksgiving. So of course my stomach is gurgling. But
thank God your microphone ain't picking that up.
Yeah. Thanks.
It is very sensitive. But more related to hockey is we know, and I don't have the exact percentage, but I think I heard it was like something like 77 or 78% of if the team is in a playoff spot right now, as of like tomorrow, which is Thanksgiving, they have a 78% chance.
But where's this number from?
But the data has changed.
No, it hasn't.
It has.
Right.
How many games would
can we just accept the friggin' premise so we can talk about it?
Sure, no. Mike.
Well,
but we're just premise. But we can't put 77% on it when it's not the same. We could just say, hey, we used to talk about American Thanksgiving, but things have changed a little, so it might extend a little. But yeah, we could talk about it.
Well, that's wrong because it's Thanksgiving and this is the day. So no, I mean, right now.
Thanksgiving's tomorrow, Mike. If you want to get technical.
Local steam here.
Okay, right now.
It might be Thanksgiving in your house today, not mine.
Right now, I'm looking at this. I
want a gravy boat from the Red Wings. That's what I want.
You let me finish.
No, I want that gravy boat. Only 7,500 people get them.
Gravy Zamboni.
What are you talking about? What gravy boat? What are you talking about?
Zamboni gravy boat.
Zamboni gravy. Basically, the Red Wings have a giveaway where they're giving away gravy boats that are in the shapes of Red Wing Zambonis.
Okay. All right.
There you go. Like Han Solo said, always think
I plead ignorance on that. I did not know that. But my point was, if you look at the standings right now, most teams are at 17, 18 games. There's a few teams that have played less, like Ottawa's played 15. There's a few teams that have played 19. So one team has played 20, Seattle. So we're almost
Philly has played 20 also.
Yeah, we're almost at the 1 quarter mark. So Philly's played 18.
Oh, I thought they played 20. Okay.
No,
Philly's at 18. I remember
10, 7, and 1.
Okay.
So, but the point being is that we're almost at the quarter pole. So at that point, usually general managers will start to, take stock of their team and decide whether whether changes will be needed. Now, like you said, yes, we aren't exactly at the 1 quarter pole, but it's a game or two. So I don't think it really. And will the percentage drift a little bit? Sure, but 70. It's like 3/4 of a chance that if you're in a playoff spot now, you're going to stay in the playoff spot unless there's a dramatic collapse. There's always the exception, like St. Louis. When they won the cup in 2019. In 2018, they were in last place on January 1st. Last place overall on January 1st. So now I look at the standings, and right now I think the teams Columbus was 4-11-4. I didn't think Columbus was a playoff team in the first place. So do I think there's going to be dramatic changes there? Well, I mean, we can talk about the Patrick Laine situation, Anthony, because they're clearly having issues with him. They've healthy scratched him. He's basically said he's
center. That wasn't the best idea in the world.
Tried to play him at center. That didn't work. And now, it doesn't sound like he's asking to be traded, but it doesn't sound like he's exactly happy.
No, but why should he be? I mean, listen, it's embarrassing when you get healthy scratched, especially with the team struggling. You want to be in that lineup to try to see if you can help turn things around a little bit for him, and to be scratched out of that game says a lot. And he said it himself. It was maybe the most embarrassing moment of his career.
Mhm.
I mean, trust me, he's had some butting heads with, I guess you could say, during his time when he was in Winnipeg. But this is a whole nother animal. But I would also turn around and say the whole experiment of having him play at center was a baffling one to me. It just was, and I just didn't think it was something. There was nothing ever about Patrick Laine's game that screamed out to me, yeah, I want to play him at center. He's an offensive first kind of player. Defensively, I think he's
a sniper. He's not a distributor.
Playing him at center to me I was trying to determine, the point that Pascal Vincent was trying to make by playing him at that position, other than, are they covering for injuries and things of that sort? But it seemed it was like more than just that. I'd have to probably.
I think there's a mental thing here, Anthony, because Pascal Vincent was an assistant with the Winnipeg Jets when Laine was there, and I feel like Laine probably felt like he was blindsided by this. Like, he knows this guy, and he probably felt like he deserved a little more rope because he knows this coach. Like, he played with this coach.
Right.
And so I think that's why it got to him a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not worried about it. If he knows one thing, Mike, I'm sorry. The one thing then I become concerned with is if he knew the guy, quote unquote, and again, coach is the coach. Coach makes the decisions. But there's sort of like there was maybe a trust thing that was there, that they knew each other and this happened.
Yeah.
You worry about the long term.
Oh yeah, I do. Absolutely.
There, I really do.
Well, it's partially a fault of roster construction because if you look at their roster right now, I mean, you have a 19-year-old Adam Fantilli playing up the middle. So, honestly, they sent Kent Johnson down to the minors. So they're really weak up the middle. So it was like, okay, let's give this a try. And maybe we can play him with Johnny Gaudreau, and Gaudreau is a playmaker and he could be a sniper up the middle. He's not a center.
The idea that maybe they could turn him into a Austin Matthews Marner situation. And
I think that's what they were thinking.
But again, the difference is that at the end of the day, Austin Matthews is a center. That's the position that he plays. You're playing Patrick Laine in an unfamiliar spot. Right?
Yeah.
And that's why if that was the mindset of doing this, to create that kind of a situation, it didn't work. In this circumstance, it just doesn't work.
I think they're just doomed, Anthony, because this feels like Colorado when when Patrick Roy left and Bednar had to try and come in and pick up the pieces, and that season was a disaster, and I think this season's a disaster.
And you never know. And again, is a possibility here that, with another year, Vincent is able to.
Yeah, I think he can do his own thing at some point.
He's always been well regarded. It's just it's tough for anybody to parachute in so close to the start of the season when everything was already gearing in for Babcock, and then things kind of blew up.
Now, I think Montreal is pretty much where we expected them to be. So I don't think that there's going to be any kind of dramatic change. They're not going to fire their coach. They're not going to make a big trade, although there's been reports of Edmonton scouting them in terms of their goaltenders, which, maybe that would make
Jake Allen might get traded.
Ottawa, they made their big change with the firing of Dorian. The question is, are they going to make roster changes? And I'm not 100% sure that, they've had significant injuries. Guys like Shabbat have been injured. And I'm not sure whether they really want to tinker with that roster, and losing Pinto for 41 games, that's had an effect on them too. But I don't perceive them as being a team that's going to have is going to make a massive deal right now, especially with their GM situation sort of in flux.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. They have to fortify the front office first and get that all settled, and then maybe they can do that. So, right now the goal, the coaching there isn't exactly great either, and that's going to get changed out at some point too.
Right. Now, Jan, since you're closer to the Islanders, watching the Metro as closely as you do, we know that Lane Lambert might be in trouble because, that team is – I don't think they're underachieving. I just think they're flawed. They can't score. They haven't been able to score for years. And Lou has not really, even though he added Bo Horvat last year, they still can't score. So it might be systematic. But if they fire Lane Lambert, they're probably just going to fire him for another defensive coach. So I don't know if that's going to solve anything.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it clearly has to do with the talent or lack thereof that GM has put around him, right? And it's something we discussed in the offseason when they went on a spending spree on 7-year, $21 million deals and didn't necessarily improve the team. Pierre Engvall's nice, but he's not a second-line winger. I mean, you have JGP getting $5 million as a third-line center. I mean, you added Horvat and moved Barzal over to the wing last year, and not sure necessarily that has paid dividends. Ryan Pulak has regressed from where we thought he was going to be in the last couple of years. A few years ago, he looked like a guy that was on the ascension, and Ilya Sorokin is scuffling a little bit, and part of that could be what's in front of him, but he also doesn't look like the Vezina Trophy candidate. And you kind of package it all together, especially with the lack of scoring. I'm not quite sure how you can blame Lane Lambert. I mean, granted, you have to have a scapegoat, and he's going to be the fall guy because usually you're not going to get rid of 20 players. You're going to get rid of the coaches, the old adage, and truthful. But I can tell you from a lot of Islander fans that I know, right, they've been saying for a while that a lot of it's Lamoriello, and they're quite well cognizant of it. Now, whether or not that's bubbled up into the owner's seat, and they necessarily realize that that's the problem. That's obviously the big problem, right? You don't have scoring. Trying to win every game 2-1 or 3-2 in the league the way it is right now is nearly impossible. I mean,
Lou has embraced this. He's talked about it since he's been there to be ahead of the differential. As long as he's ahead of the differential, they're comfortable. Their player development hasn't been good either in years. Like they're like 50-50 on whether a prospect makes it or not. Even probably less than that. It's not even 50-50.
Well, I mean,
again,
Bouvalier's got.
Oh, I was going to say,
sorry, Mike. I'll finish.
Again, it's a fault of construction here because so you have Brock Nelson as your number 2 center, and you have Horvat as your number 1 center, moving Barzal to the wing. Okay, Barzal should be a center. He's a distributor. He's a great playmaker. And I'm sure that playing on the wing is limiting that. So if that was the case, then you should have never traded for and signed Horvat. You should have addressed your need on the wing. You should have added snipers, maybe traded for Patrick Laine, maybe signed.
All they did was look for who was out there that they could acquire and make the roster moves to make it fit and force the fit. That's what they did because they knew they were limited in what they can do. They knew they were limited in who they could call up. Right. And that's it.
There was one other guy that could have gotten, right, which was the guy that was prominently mentioned, and they didn't get him, and that was Timo Meier. I mean, that was the guy they supposedly were targeting originally. Horvat was kind of the second option. Meier would have been a better fit. Now, whether or not he would have signed the long-term deal in New Jersey, on the island to stay there.
They probably got Windjam that may have been an issue.
Right.
Although it certainly wasn't in terms of a location thing, in terms of, Meier ends up signing a long-term deal with the Devils.
Yeah, he wanted to play with the Swiss national team.
But it's an inherently more offensive opportunity and more.
Yes, that's the difference.
Heeshear is a factor. Mike's right.
And you talked about the offensive, right? So the issue, look at Bouvalier's moved on to Vancouver in a deal, and he's actually sold. And I think we're both expecting, when is Oliver Wahlstrom going to be the next guy that goes elsewhere and finally reaches his potential, because he's not being used correctly. I mean, it seems Holmstrom is not necessarily the same kind of weapon Wahlstrom is, and they're not developing him properly. And he's a guy that's likely going to go somewhere else and probably be a 25 goal scorer, which is all what we expect him to do. And if they make a change in management beforehand and somebody else comes in and he's willing to basically shake things up and move guys around, that maybe you'll see that. But right now it's got to be Lamoriello. And Russ, if you said is accurate, right, that ownership is not necessarily seeing the forest through the trees and recognizing that. But I can tell you the fan base is going to stop showing up. I mean, a lot of my friends I have friends of mine who have seasons. I have friends of mine who go a decent amount, and they're eventually just going to stop showing up, because I can tell you the annoyance and being fed up is starting to grow in that fan base out here.
And that's similar to what's going on in Buffalo right now, because, and, nobody's marching in the streets, but, not that they were promised that this team was going to make the playoffs. But again, I look back to the summer and I look back to the moves that could have been made and the moves that weren't made, which was upgrading their defense by adding a relatively big name. They decided they didn't want to waste the assets on a guy like a Pesci or a Hannafin, because they didn't want to sign those guys long-term, because they wanted to sign Power and Dahlin. But they needed to upgrade, I think, better than Connor Clifton and Eric Johnson. Their defense hasn't been bad. That hasn't been the problem. The problem has been scoring and goaltending, which you wouldn't think that scoring, a team that scored 296 goals last year, would have a problem scoring. But can you expect Tage Thompson to score 47 goals every year and for them to score over 3.6 goals per game? Right now, they're averaging less than 3, and their goaltending is not good. And Russ, I mean, to expect Devin, you said it, I said it, and most people were reasonable.
There's a lot to expect.
I mean, Devin Levi, a 21-year-old coming out of the NCAA to be your number one goaltender, is asinine.
It was too much to expect. Look, he's going to be a fine goaltender in this league.
Yes.
But this was a lot to expect. They did come up short last year at the deadline. Now they're coming up short on the way it's going. It's funny because when I was on Sirius yesterday, Mick Kern said, who's the team that's disappointed you the most? He said, for me, it's the Buffalo Sabres. And I said, it's the Buffalo Sabres. Like, it's just because they have so many other things that are just right there at the surface that if they got better than average goaltending in the NHL, they would have a real good chance of making it. But right now with the crew they have, unless Levi takes a massive jump at midseason, which I don't think he will because he's never played that many games, I think the odds are really against him. They got a problem.
Yeah, if you expect above average goaltending, then get an above average goaltender, because right now you have one of the most inconsistent goalies in the league in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who one day looks like Mika Kiprusoff and the next day looks like Hardy Astrom. And you have Eric Comrie, who is a nice guy and a pretty decent goaltender when he stays healthy. The problem is he never does. He gets hurt. He's been hurt 3 times in the last 2 years. So you can't depend on him to be anything more than a backup. And Levi right now has 11 NHL games of experience.
Yeah, and his save percentage is under league average. Like, it's close. It's really close. But again, he's learning on the job. It's hard to do.
Right.
I still feel like, honestly, I'm going to go back and say what they did last year with Levi was a mistake, and that was letting him travel with the team instead of playing with Rochester and at least battling for a playoff spot, which they eventually made the playoffs, right? And who was the playoff goalie last year for Rochester?
Oh, Malcolm Subban.
Malcolm Subban. It could have been Devin Levi, and that would have been following the path that at least Carey Price followed before he broke in with the Canadians.
It could have been Luukkonen, and Luukkonen was
him too.
Yeah, but he supposedly had a minor injury, and that's why they didn't want to do it.
It could have been Levi. Instead, they gave Levi a few games and let him travel with the team instead of playing all the time down there and in the playoffs.
Now,
made no sense. Still doesn't make sense.
Now, 2 teams that are just above, or actually they're tied with the Sabres in the standings. Well, one is a point ahead. The Penguins at 18 points, the Devils at 17 points. Jan, I know the Penguins have had a ton of injuries. I know that the Devils lost Jack Hughes for a few weeks. So I don't see any big kind of move on the horizon for either team. In fact, I don't know how Pittsburgh would make a big move with all the moves they made during the summer. So, I think those teams are right now going to just stay on the course that they are and hope that they have a better second quarter.
Yeah, and just going back to Buffalo, they've also been hit by injuries, right? Tage is out. I think Cousins missed some time. So they've also been hit kind of hard in terms of injuries. But Pittsburgh has been hit. Ricardo Kell is now out. So if he happens to be out long-term and really long-term, that could be a way that they use some salary. You also have Brian Rust is dealing with an injury now. You don't know how long he's going to be out.
Patrick Kane? Is that what you mean?
Nope. I'm not even going there. I'm just saying using salary in general to try to make a trade. It could be very. Wouldn't shock me. It would actually be a decent move if they have the cap space. Whether or not he's got anything left, I'll refer you to Nicholas Backstrom, and you can see whether or not he's got anything left. Right?
I don't think they're the same injuries. I just don't.
No. But hip resurfacing is hip resurfacing, right? And Kane is not necessarily. Kane used to use his speed. That's not necessarily may not necessarily be an option anymore. We'll see. But in terms of fit, the question being though, right, is if Tristan Jarry doesn't find his game. You're going to see Alexander Lukovic basically be the goalie, and he came up from the AHL after coming back from an injury and pitched a shutout in the AHL and then won his first game in the NHL. So, Jarry struggled this year. He's their long-term answer given that they've signed him long-term. So they need to figure that out. And they're also No, he's been very up and down, and I think they're still figuring out how Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson mesh together. Right, they're somewhat overlapping players to a certain extent based upon their power play usage. Both of them are going to need the time. I don't know whether or not they're going to stick with the 2 defenseman forward format. In terms of at the point, they may go 1-1, and that kind of impacts the other one. You got to figure Letang is going to be the one to take the hit, and then in Jersey, I mean, it's been the same thing, right? You've gotten very up and down goaltending from Vanacek, which was the case when he was in Washington, but wasn't the case last year. Akira Schmid necessarily hasn't set the world on fire in his time, and they lost Hughes, and Timo Meier has taken a while to settle in. I mean, he has not been particularly great. I mean, I think they're very happy what they've gotten out of Luke Hughes right now, because Hughes has stepped in and been that top 40 defenseman you expect him to be. But if Meier struggles and with Hughes out and they missed his offense and you're not getting the goaltending, I don't think it's panic time at all in Jersey, given the talent that exists there. But maybe they had to take a step back to take a step forward. So I'm not really that concerned where they are right now.
Well, I would say this. I have a quick and dirty on this. I think both Pittsburgh and the Devils will eventually make it. I think they can do enough to correct it. The Devils, I think they're missing Damon Severson. They're probably missing Graves a little bit, but Luke Hughes is terrific offensively. He's not there yet defensively, and Severson was a guy you could count on all the time. He may not have pulled the points that you wanted him to get, and basically they weren't giving him power play after a while either. But he was reliable, very reliable defensively. When you put Hughes in there, you gain that dynamic offensive guy, but you also gain a guy who's a little bit of a chance taker, and occasionally that turns into a turnover. So I think they'll figure that out.
Well, I mean, Anthony, Russ, and I agree on the Devils. I'm not so sure about Pittsburgh. That if those two move up, then obviously 2 teams that are in the playoff spots right now would have to move down. And right now, obviously, I think the Capitals are a little bit of a surprise, especially they've only played 15 games and they have 20 points. So they're not scoring a lot, but they're compiling wins. But the team that everybody looks at right now that says, oh, they're not a playoff team is Philadelphia. But right now, through 18 games, they're playing like a playoff team.
They're playing like a playoff team because they're playing a quote unquote playoff style of hockey.
Yes.
Which is fine when you get to the playoffs. When you're trying to extend this out over an 82 game season, they're basically compensating for the fact that they don't have that game breaking talent in their lineup. Now, can they stay in this longer than expected? Sure. But I do think once you start, injuries invariably will start to hit. And then you're going to have to then try to fill those gaps. They've been fortunate this year. Again, Sean Couturier, relatively healthy this season. That papers over. We've always said that for years. It papers over a lot of things having Sean Couturier.
Oh, yeah.
You've got Cam Atkinson finally healthy after his injury issues. That allows you to, maybe play matchups a little more than you normally would be able to put a Travis Konechny in a different spot, and also have younger players who are rotating in and out of the lineup, like a Brink, like a Forster, to be able to kind of glom and learn from those guys. I'm not, again, I was asked this again. We talked about this on Off the Post. Is that are you willing to move the post a little bit, so to speak, or the marker for the Flyers as to what the expectations are? And the answer to that question is I'm still not there yet. I'm just not.
Me neither.
I don't believe at the moment that this will be something that they can sustain. Do I think it's good for their overall long-term build to know that they can compete with these teams if they put the effort in? Yes. Do I think it's sustainable over time? I think there's far more of a struggle for Philadelphia there.
Yeah, the Rangers.
So you basically just use the Islander argument, right? I mean, the Islanders are kind of playing a playoff style all the time, and we've said that it's not necessarily a recipe for success overall. Philly just happens to be doing it better right now.
Exactly. They're doing it better. The goaltending has been pretty.
That's been really good. Yeah.
Well, Hart's been good.
And you can argue. You can argue there's more offensive talent in Philly right now than the Islanders overall, right? You look at Couturier, you look at Tippett, you look at Frost, you look at Konechny, right?
Scoring wing depth, I would say for sure.
I mean, if Frost ever got to play, he would.
Thank you.
Frost is in and out of the lineup. That's the problem. He keeps getting pulled in and out of the lineup, and I don't. He's not accorded the same amount of wiggle room as some other players might be in the lineup.
No, I mean, I will say this: the quote recently about
one more thing I would add to it.
Yeah.
And again, he may be very much indicative of the surprise of the Flyers early in the season has been Sean Walker's play on defense.
Sure.
He's been really, really good. Better than anybody has kind of expected him to. Early part of his career obviously was derailed by injury. We're going to see whether or not, over the long term, whether or not Walker is somebody who's going to be part of a long-term answer for Philadelphia. But he kind of embodies what the team is right now.
No, I think that's fair.
You can ask about the Rangers.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is,
hang on, before the Rangers, I was going to say the Torts quote the other day, basically saying Morgan Frost has to play in the top 6 or that's it. Is baloney. It's just a way to limit him.
I think if he's saying it from the point of view of if you're going to get what you're supposed to get out of him, he's not a lower in the lineup checking line.
Well, you can play him on the third line. That's again, it's ridiculous
right now. That.
I know he doesn't want to. And then the other thing is you can't ask Noah Cates to be a defensive center and then say, "Hey, we need to get more points out of you." There's only so many points you can get out of Noah Cates. I've watched him his whole career. And he's playing him wrong. He's doing it wrong.
He's been playing him at center. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to get the most out of Noah Cates, and we've said this many times in the press box, you, me, and other members of the press have said it too, that the best thing that you can do if you're trying to get more offense out of Noah Cates, he should be playing back on the wing. You're going to get his offense plus the defense. If you're playing him just as a center in this circumstance, I think there's a ceiling for how much you're going to get out of him. And my concern for Noah Cates is he could be a really, really, really good player for the Flyers, but you're putting a cap. My belief is they're putting a cap on him by playing him at center. He did a great job last year in the role, but if your expectation now is to add the offense to it, to me, I am not convinced that this is the tack to take.
Okay, I want to move to the West, but I was just going to say, the teams that I think are firmly entrenched in playoff spots that we expect that will be in the playoffs at the end, Boston, the Rangers, Florida, maybe Toronto. Boston, I think, is going to add a center before the deadline, but it's nothing they're going to do right now. The Rangers, Jan, I think would probably want to add on the blue line before the deadline, but that's not something they need to do right this second. And Toronto definitely needs to add.
Who are you replacing? Well, when
that's
Fox comes back, right? You have Fox, Lindgren, you have Trouba, Miller, you have Gustafsson and Schneider. Who are you replacing?
I replaced Gustafsson in a red hot minute.
This is Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette won't replace
Laviolette. Won't do it.
And honestly, he's been better defensively than advertised. I don't think he's great, but he's been much better than advertised defensively.
He's not learning. It's just he's not learning. He just hasn't had that moment where the fan base is going to hate him yet on a turnover, but it's coming.
Mike already hates him, so don't count that. Mike already hates him, so don't count that.
Hey, wait. The thing was, he only did like a couple bad things in Toronto, but that was enough. Okay, so swinging to the West. Obviously, San Jose is a disaster. But I don't see them firing their coach. And, maybe they trade some veterans closer to the deadline. But, they're in the Max Celebrini sweepstakes, so they're really not going to do anything. And the same thing with Chicago. Chicago is, their main focus right now is protecting Connor Bedard and, seeing if he can get Rookie of the Year. He's going to play 20 minutes a night, and he's going to be protected. The Edmonton Oilers, I think it's firmly established what they need. They've already fired their coach. They should have fired their general manager for what he hasn't done
But they weren't going to do that.
But they're not going to do that. And Jeff Jackson is going to take over there. But right now it appears they're full-fledged in search of a goaltender. And it's a question of, I think Jake Allen is a stopgap. I don't think he's the answer. The answer is somebody like John Gibson, but I don't know.
He's not going anywhere. I think Anaheim's going to be in it the whole year.
Right, and that was the point I was going to make. So, but Jan, and Anthony, after you, I don't know. Jake Allen might be the best that they can get, but do you really think Jake Allen is going to take them to the promised land?
So you're talking Edmonton, right? I think they were targeting the other goalie in Montreal, was the rumor this morning. Montreal was the other guy they were talking about. Allen wasn't the one that was prominently mentioned. So I don't know if Allen's the guy. Do I think he's going to lead him to the promised land? Not necessarily. I mean, you could argue that right now a bag of pucks is better than, the former goalie Jack Campbell, who's another one of Michael's favorites, who we know that he was ecstatic when he went there.
He had a shutout last game.
Yeah, after getting bombed when he first got sent down. So, I'll for that as a small sample size, and we'll see what happens right now with him. With Anaheim, it's interesting. They've gotten nothing out of Zegras this year, right? The problem was, and it's funny because I know the video coordinator from the Ducks, and I said to him, look, they should slow play his return, because if he tries to come back too quickly, he's going to get hurt. And sure as heck, he tried to go from 0 to 100 in like a week. And that's how he ended up getting hurt, because he strained his groin muscles basically by doing too much too soon. And now he's basically been on the shelf for several weeks. But you look at what they're getting out of a Toronto there that's come out of nowhere, right? He's had a couple of streaks like this, one with the Rangers when he first got there, but nobody expected this. But Edmonton has to do something. You can't waste another year of McDavid and Draisaitl. Before you have to worry about is how frustrated does McDavid get, and does he start to put some whispers out there that maybe this is not the right spot? Once those get out there, you're not retracting and coming back from that. So you need to do whatever you need to do beforehand to nip that in the bud before anything becomes public in terms of being dissatisfied.
Well, the funny thing was, and I heard the comment, but I can't repeat it. I can only say verbatim. Draisaitl, because Draisaitl, the extension can be signed next year. But if after next summer he doesn't sign it, then he's a lame duck. I mean, basically, then all we're going to be talking about is like what we're talking about with William Nylander right now is like, where is he going to be traded, or where is he going to go in free agency, or blah blah, or are they going to pay him $14 million and make him the highest paid player in the league? But Draisaitl was like, well, essentially was not talking glowingly about what the Oilers are doing right now, and it's like, who in their right mind would, Anthony? Nobody would. It's a cluster F. Right. It really is.
It's a mess. I mean, the expectations are what they are for the Oilers, and they have come up woefully short of those expectations so far this season. It's a lot. And again, but we've said this many times, the structure of the Oilers is their biggest problem in terms, especially from the net out. I thought last season I thought the Ekholm acquisition was a good one for them. I thought it helped stabilize them and help their playoff run. But at the end of the day, you still got to get passable goaltending in order for your team to be able to compete, in order to be able to compete from a confidence standpoint, everything that goes into that. It's just that the whole mix doesn't work there for me.
Yeah,
well, Anthony, look when you get beat, but look when Mike Russell, when you get beyond the top six, though, who's their bottom six? There's not much there.
Ryan McLeod and Yamamoto,
but is there a structure? Is there a structure? Is there an identity? Are they going to basically push the agenda? Are they going to basically forecheck? They're okay guys, but
either they're standing around on defense. They're done. They're done this year.
But right now, okay. I and again, I can't remember who said it, but I agree with the point of view. If you could get say percentage wise, 905 save percentage out of your goaltender in Edmonton, you'd be, you'd guarantee yourself a playoff spot. Right now, combined, Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard, and Jack Campbell, it's 874. Now, the team in front of them bears a lot of responsibility, but in the end, you need a goalie to make a stop, and none of these guys are making a stop.
It's the defense too. The defense is standing around.
It is a symbiotic thing there, Mike. It is a team concept. It is not just also the goaltending in this case. You'd like to get those stops. It's a big symptom. But at the same time, I would say also the defense. It's like one bad, just everything's going around in a whirlpool, right?
But how many coaches have they gone through now? You're on coach 3 in the last 3 years?
Well, if we're talking about in the Holland area, coaches usually don't get an opportunity for 2, much
right.
less
So
3.
So that's a problem, right? It's endemic of the organization.
People have been talking well about Knobloch for years, but people are also talking about Woodcroft. But people are also talking well about Woodcroft too for years.
Okay, but the problem is the owner. Hold on. The problem is the owner, because he just brought in Paul Coffey to be an assistant. Is that really going to help this team this year? No.
Well, it'll help in rushing the puck. I mean, I don't know about playing defense in your own zone, but
that's an old move that we've seen happen in other organizations when an owner falls back on some of the old great players they have and say, You've been saying good things to me. Why don't you get behind that bench?
You know those pictures with the bubble? There's a picture of Paul Coffey talking to Cody Cece, and you put the bubble next to it, and it was basically like, Cody, this is what you do, blah, 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 blah. And then Cody turns to him and says, I'm Cody Cece. I suck. Remember that? I mean, that's the problem. You've got 3 good defensemen on that team. Darnell Nurse is a really good defenseman. Ekholm is a solid veteran, and Evan Bouchard is a really good young defenseman. Then you know
what it is? Bouchard's a really good young offensive defenseman.
Defenseman, right?
The defense isn't great. That's another problem.
But the second half of that defense is Kulak, Desharnais, Broberg. It's crap.
Broberg can't play defense either. They'll find that out someday. They should have found out when they drafted him, but he can't play defense. Holloway hasn't really. He's not he's a guy that's in between because of injuries and such. He could develop at some point, but that bottom 6 is a great point that Jan made, because I couldn't even name you their bottom 6. I really couldn't.
And you also Connor Brown has not panned out like they hoped he would.
No,
right?
that's
the grand reunion has turned out unfortunately to be us. Look, good idea, bad execution, but you needed to basically have other steps in place, and part of that is the cap issues. But
he's on.
First on Mike, let me just say on Knobloch, it's a good hire. I'm to like Knobloch a lot, right? He did a good job with Hartford last year. He was doing a really good job this year with them. It is a loss for the Ranger organization. Now, whether or not he can get that team to play defense, as you said, if you don't have the talent, right, you need to come up with a system that masks the imperfections of the talent. And whether or not he's going to be able to do that, given the ownership there, is going to make it very challenging.
And they've been covered up by the offensive Draisaitl and McDavid for a number of years, and that's cured all ills till you got to the playoffs. And now this year they tried to play that type of playoff style hockey at the beginning of the year, and look how and with a team that can't play defense.
So how old's Stu Bickle? Just asking.
Well, Philadelphia will find out pretty soon. Minnesota now, okay. Just like the Islanders in the East. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're going to fire Dean Evison yet, Russ, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's getting to the point where almost Bill Guerin is going to give him the old vote of confidence, and then a week later he gets canned. But there's some problems with the roster too.
Yeah, there's problems. You could see at times where I've watched some of their games, and Everson is kind of like in between and maybe what he wants to do on the bench. I've seen these moments that don't look great. Bill Guerin's a very decisive guy. Like, I know him a little bit, and Bill Guerin is a guy that just wants to keep moving ahead. And if something stops this team from moving ahead and he thinks they should be better, he'll fire him tomorrow. Like, he's not gonna care. He's not gonna care what the media thinks. He's not gonna care what the fans think. And so far, he's made a lot of good decisions. And to be honest, I might make that same decision.
Right. Now, I don't think anything's going to happen in Nashville. New coach, new general manager. They brought in players. I don't think the expectations were really high, even though, they signed Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen and, made the moves that they made. So I think that they're, they want to make the playoffs, obviously, and they're not well out of it, but they're out of it enough that I don't think it's going to, really come to fruition. But
you know what their issue is? You could tell, like, Barry Trotz is just learning the position, and they're picking up anybody that can move who could maybe give some offense. They've picked up some guys, and when you're like that, they need to retool, and that's what they're going to do. But they just didn't want to say that to the fan base, and that's fine. They have some good players; they're just not there.
Now, Calgary is
losing Novak didn't help them, right? He was doing a nice job of filling the 2C, and now he's out 4 to 6 weeks. And I think on Minnesota, they hitched their wagon a little bit to Philip Gustafson, who's been brutal this year, right? They've had to turn back to Marc-Andre Fleury, and that's been a major impact as to why they've struggled this year, has been the play between the pipes.
And I'm almost wondering whether they're going to give Wallstedt a chance, but the thing is, then they'd have to carry 3 goaltenders, and we know.
No, they could trade Fleury. Well,
they could. I'm not saying they couldn't, Russ, but I think that I think the only way they're going to call up Wallstedt is if they're really bound and determined to give him time in the NHL. And
I think by the All-Star break, they might call up Wallstedt anyhow.
I think if they're struggling at a certain point, they think they're not going to make it, this might be the perfect opportunity for him to get some NHL time without necessarily the pressure of the playoff race being involved. So
and he's playing really well in the AHL right now. 6-2, 2.01 goals against, 932 save percentage.
He's a stud. No, he's a stud.
Oh, they may bring him up sooner just to save their season.
Yeah. Okay, so now
can they fit him in cap wise, given how tight they are cap space wise?
No, that's why they'll probably have to trade.
And there's going to need to be some moves involved, probably.
Yeah, but he's on his entry level.
Yeah, but they probably don't
even with
that.
the ELC. I don't know if they can fit him in.
Right.
I was being facetious, but they're really tight.
Yeah, they had to trade Kalen Addison to bring in Zach Bogosian. So
right.
Yeah. Now, right now, Arizona, Anaheim are both at 18 points. I think most people think Anaheim is overachieved because they're so young. And I think, they may stay in it for the first half. They'll regress a little bit, but I think they're going to, under Cronin and under Verbeek, they're going to stick with the young kids, and, they may trade a veteran here or there at the deadline, but I think they're going to pretty much stay where they are right now.
I don't know. I'm going to argue it because I say, look at what they're doing without Zegras and without Drysdale. I mean, they're doing great. They're doing all the right things with Carlson. And at some point, if they truly live up to their word and they're going to just let him go, Carlson can play in this league.
Yep.
McTavish is already really hard to handle. We've talked about their offseason pickup, which could be the greatest pickup again. And Ranger fans don't like that, but so far it's worked out good. He's leading the team in scoring. I don't know. I said the other day, is he going to be like Ken Reitz?
Brian Savage. Remember,
Ken Reitz. If you look up Ken Reitz, Ken Reitz used to lead the NL by. If you got you got the stats before the All-Star break. Ken Reitz was the leading hitter in the National League like every year for like 6-7 years
at the All-Star break, and then he'd hit 230 from the All-Star break to the end of this. No, but Brian Savage and Reggie Jackson have one thing in common. They're both called Mr. October because Brian Savage was the leading goal scorer in October, I think 4 years in a row, and then he just disappeared.
But the thing is, they're getting great play out of Minchukov. They're getting more play out of guys that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
And they do have some young guys coming back that definitely could add something to the lineup. They have cap space. They're, if they're in a playoff race, who says, if they don't try and get Patrick Kane, which I think that would be a good fit. But if they don't, who's to say they don't just go and pick up somebody up at the deadline if they're close, because they have cap space. I just feel like if you look at Gibson too, Gibson's playing really well. But the problem is their differential is very tight. They're averaging like 2.8 goals per game. They're giving up more goals than they're scoring. So that's always a little tough. If they turn that around a little bit, if they could get to a 3-goal-a-game team, which is hard, but if they get there, I think they're going to be in it.
Okay, I'll just say this about the Arizona Coyotes, because I don't know whether they're overachieving or underachieving. Right now, they're the same place that Anaheim is
They're
right
doing
now.
it to spite you, Michael. Just remember that.
What's that?
They're doing it to spite you. Just remember that.
No. I don't have issues with the players on the team. I have issues with the organization being a dumpster fire. They don't belong there.
Two words to you, Michael. Connor Ingram. You want to look at why they're excelling? Connor Ingram. Look at his numbers compared to Karel Vizmelka, and they're stark.
Right, I know that.
Do we even understand why Nashville gave him up? I mean, I'm not a big Saros guy.
No.
I know. I don't understand why they did that.
Yeah. No, I don't. But
they have Askarov down in the minors, so maybe they were paving the way for him down the road.
Okay, but he's not there yet, right?
But they chose him over. They chose Kevin Lankinen over him. That's what they did. Yeah. But this is the thing that just screams to me. And of course, this is my Leaf-centric world. If Alex Kerfoot had the stats that he has in Arizona right now in Toronto, he wouldn't be able to leave his apartment. He's got a goal and 4 assists in 18 games. And I liked Alex Kerfoot as a player, but it's like, what happened to the guy who a couple years ago was really good?
Listen, Mike, he's not the biggest guy. He played a lot of minutes. He might be getting worn down in this league. I mean,
it's possible.
Here's where it gets fun. The loss of Barrett Hayton is going to be huge. Now, Hayton hasn't scored, right? He's had a brutal year in terms of scoring. He still was there, but he still was their number one center. right?
Yes.
And that taking him out of that lineup damages the depth that was a little thin to begin with and forces other guys to step up. Now, Keller, we know how good he is. Schmaltz, we know. Well, Logan Cooley, you want your shot and you want to be the number one. Well, guess what? You now are the number one center in Arizona. Probably a little bit too early.
I think he'll
and they
run
would
with
like.
it, too.
I think he very well might. But what about the number two? I don't think Nick Bukestad is a number two center in this league. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Nick Schmaltz, maybe?
He's your number
Schmaltz
two.
would have to go-
Schmaltz is a winger.
Schmaltz would have to do
He's a
it.
right winger, and he's better on that first line with
No,
with
but
Keller.
he can play center. He can.
Now,
You don't want to start damaging lines too much, right? So
talk about, and one last thing on Arizona.
I'm not making it anyhow, so move on.
One thing about it. One last thing about Arizona.
just
talk
to spite you, Russ, you're going to stay in it. Just to spite you.
Let me make my point here. One player who cost himself a shit ton of money is Matt Dumba because Minnesota offered Matt Dumba a 6 or 7 year extension the year before free agency. He turned it down because he wanted to go to market. He had the worst year of his career leading into free agency. He got a 1 year deal from Arizona, and right now he's got 4 points in 18 games. I think he's
not a scorer though. But he's not a scorer. He had one good year scoring. That's it, Mike.
Yeah, but he was better than this. He was better. He was not a 20-point defenseman. He was a 35.
That means he's heading for Toronto. That's what that means.
And how is he deployed also? He may be necessarily getting defensive zone starts, which may be limiting his offensive opportunities, given what they need in Arizona. And he won't be the first player who's basically bet on himself to make a big deal, only to sign a 1 year deal. I know it'll come to me. There was a guy who signed was Klingberg. Klingberg bet on himself to get a huge deal, ended up with a 1 year deal in Arizona. Look how that panned out for him.
Oh no, Anaheim. Yeah, no, a little bit.
Yes.
No,
yeah, he was in Dallas. He had a big offer he turned down. He ended up having to take a 1 year deal in Anaheim, and then ended up having to take a deal this year in Toronto, and he may never be seen from again.
And they're thanking their lucky stars about it that he didn't sign.
You know what, though, Dumba? I got to tell you something. Dumba will still get a decent contract in free agency because teams know what he can do, his physicality and his skating.
He's a righty.
He's a righty, yeah.
Okay.
And he eats minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so the Kraken right now are in a wild card spot at 7, 8, and 5, which to me it's like that shows the weakness of the Western Conference, that a team under 500 is in a along with the St. Louis Blues, who haven't been burning the doors down. Russ, I mean
they're playing well. What do you mean? Don't listen. The St. Louis Blues, I guarantee, will make the playoffs. That is a guarantee. I said preseason Jordan Binnington would be bouncing back. He has bounced back. They've got some nice pieces there. Again, some of their young players, Thomas has bounced back. You know, everybody was starting to worry about them. They're getting more than people thought, and I think they're going to be a playoff team.
And Hofer's giving
with Jakob Vrana a healthy scratch again.
Whatever. Jakob Vrana is not the guy that runs that team.
No, I'm just saying he's been so up and down. It's interesting, right? And Bogdanovich has had an okay year, not a
Kevin Hayes
great year yet. But as you mentioned, right? But I'm saying it's what you mentioned. Binnington's been great. Binnington has been the guy that's basically carried their bacon, which is what he did when Berube first stepped in a couple of years ago.
Well, they are doing it defensively because right now they only have 4 players in double figures in points right now, and that's not great.
And Kevin Hayes has 7 points. Yep. 7 points for all the talk that when he got out of Philly, he would show everybody. Now, Kyrou could do better even at the 10 points. And Braden Shen really did get off to a slow start because I think making him captain kind of did that. But he's picked it up lately. So, I'm not worried. They've got guys that have been winners. And I think if Binnington plays well, they do well.
Now,
and Hayes is a perfect 3C when it comes playoff time if they make it, right? You put him as your 3C, that's a perfect third line center come playoff time.
It is.
I think Dallas is a lock. I think Vegas is a lock. I think the Kings are a lock. I think the Avalanche are a lock. The 2 teams that are in top 3 spots right now that I'm withholding judgment on are Winnipeg and Vancouver. Now, Vancouver, everything has gone right for Vancouver. Demko is playing
healthy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Everything's gone right. They're healthy. Demko's playing great. Hughes might be a candidate for the Norris. Pedersen is
Norris, the Hart and the Norris.
Well,
Yep.
Well, yeah, but okay. Usually defensemen don't win the heart, but I'm saying
He's
no,
been
Bobby Orr
been
numbers.
phenomenal.
I
He's
know.
got 30 points already.
I know. But Winnipeg, I think, I saw them play the Sabres a couple games ago. They barely beat a Sabres team that's struggling. Scheifele's having an okay year. Hellebuck is Hellebuck. So I think they need help.
Perfetti's not back yet, right?
Who is?
Perfetti?
No, he's back.
He's back now?
He's back. Yeah.
Okay, so give him a little time to start kicking it back in the offense. I think their defense is good enough. I like Hellebuck. I think Scheifele is back to being Scheifele. And look, I think, Kyle Connor is one of the 5 best players in the league right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I think one thing that has to be talked about, right, is when they say that, I don't think about the contract, we've kind of learned that that's a bunch of garbage in a lot of players, right? So Scheifele and Helly both getting the contracts done before the season started took a huge load off their mind and made it a lot easier to play. The other piece, Mike, you kind of went over briefly. How good has Cam Talbot been in LA? I mean, I don't know if anybody could have seen this, but he's been phenomenal for them in LA and a big reason why they've been so good this year.
But he's playing too much. They do need to get somebody else. He's playing too much.
I don't know.
Well, they have Copley. They just haven't played him.
No, because he can't play. Copley, the magic is worn off Copley. They know it. They're looking for a backup. You can see it a mile away. And the other thing is, Mike, this is really funny, but with Jonas Johansson's played 16 games.
I know.
He's going to be happy that Vasilevsky's back. Otherwise, he'd be playing like 75 games this year. How they ruling?
I think Matt Tompkins.
You mean Matt Tompkins? Matt Tompkins played twice. Was it twice, Mike? He played 3 times.
That's it.
I have Johansson in 2 leagues. I'm like waiting for the news that Vasi's starting so I can get rid of him. Only because I'm only holding out. If he's going to play, I might as well use him.
Matt Tompkins has played more for Canada in the Olympics than they have for Tampa Bay. So, it's just.
I have a prediction here, though, because I looked at the numbers. Okay. I think 4 or 5 goalies are going to play over 60 games this year, which I think is crazy.
Are we seeing a reversal of – well, let's see what happens when it comes to playoff time when these guys wear it down. Everybody goes, oh, wait, we probably played them too much during the regular season. Why didn't we think of resting them more?
Right.
Who's the 4, Mike, besides Helly?
Well, Hellebuck.
Who's the 4, Russ?
Hellebuck's definite. Hart's going to be one of them.
Sorokin's
going to be one of them.
The thumbs up.
You got a thumbs up?
I think you know what I think it is. I think when you put the thumbs up, it does that.
No, mine didn't do it.
Yeah, and I don't know because it's okay. So Hellebuck, Sorokin. Do you think Shesterkin will play 60?
No, I think Carter Hart will.
No. Shesterkin's not even playing tonight. The rumor is they're starting Quick tonight, which is what I predicted anyway. I had a feeling they'd go Quick tonight.
And what's his name? Georgiev's going to play it, which is crazy.
Please.
Because Francouz is hurt, Russ.
Well, they get somebody.
They have Prosvetov. He's a goaltender.
Right.
He's an NHL goalie. Jeez, play him.
But
I mean, okay. I'm just before we end the show because at one point. Prosvetov had played a grand total of 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Georgiev had played every game. So I know. I'm looking at it right now. Okay. Prosvetov has played 60. Let's see here. Where is it? He's played 2 games. He started 2 games. So Georgiev has played 15 games and Prosvetov has played 2.
And look, I told everybody he's a number 1. There's no question he's a number 1. He's never played this amount of games. It's craziness to do that to him. He will be that guy that wears down the playoffs. I think Jan knows that, and I know it.
Yep. Sign Yaroslav Halak. Terry 3G's good. There's your answer. Sign Halak.
It's actually not a bad idea, but maybe not in LA. I'm a little surprised that Carolina let him go unless he's got nothing left, or they think that Chef is going to be the guy.
No, I heard the reason why. Carolina wanted to send him down to the AHL for a conditioning stint. The problem is they don't have an AHL team. So
that is the best. Right there. There should be a movie about that. Hey, we really like this guy. We want to send you to the AHL, but we don't have any place to send you.
Well, no, they would have had to have begged an AHL team that needed a goaltender but then there was no guarantee that he was going to get called up because Ronta and Kochekov are healthy. So it's like, okay, they could have sent him down to a conditioning stint for what? Send him to Abbotsford for 3
Yeah, that
weeks?
whole thing's crazy. And I think Carolina will make the playoffs, but I think they're actually just going to make it by the skin of their teeth now. I thought they were going to be sort of like near the class of the division, but once they lost to Anderson, and now with Brindamore, whether he trusts Kochikov
And they
enough or not.
lost Pesci also, didn't they, Russ?
Yes.
Didn't they lose Pesci
But I think
also?
that Anderson
Pesci
was worse.
lost.
Anderson was worse, to be
He's
honest.
going to be back pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, Pesci's back, but I thought Pesci had been out. Pesci was out for a while. He just returned.
He
about a
was
week
out
ago
for a
in the
while.
state game.
And right now, I think Brindamore might be, he's got reason to be not have confidence in Kochikov because he's 1-4. So I mean,
Right. So it's the same old problem with them.
Yeah. All right. We'll call it there, and we're not going to do a show on Friday, so we'll be back on Monday. We're hoping to have Eklund back on Monday. So for the departed Anthony Mangione, for
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Russ Cohen.
I want to say it for me. I don't need you to say it for me.
Bye. Goodbye. See you later. Arrivederci. And without the buzz, it's just